Whether you have taken economics, human geography, or told your friend to stop whining about poor Wi-Fi, you've probably heard the phrases first world and or third world country. Well, in simple terms, a first world country is a more developed country, MDC. Third world countries are less developed countries, LDC'S, while second world countries fit right in between. Determining whether a country is first, second, or third world is defined by that country's position on the list of countries' HDIs. That stands for Human Development Index. We'll get to that in a second. In that list, the upper third are first, the middle are second, and the lower third are third world countries. But is this really the best way to go about this? HDI is a numeric way of measuring the well-being, quality of life, and the standard of living of a country. Originally, determining the quality of life in a country was to look at the GDP, gross domestic product of a country. Because if a country is doing incredibly well economically, the people must be doing greatly, but GDP only measures the country's monetary output. In that case, China going from 1957 to 1958 must have had one of the largest leaps in quality of life at the time. But in reality, the entire country was starving and 40 million people died. After many years, economists have tried to find a solution other than GDP to measure the quality of life within a country. They've broken down welfare into three categories. Firstly, welfare or happiness has definitely something to do with consumption, because consumption of goods gives us utility, pleasure, or happiness. But it also has something to do with how long we live, because the longer we live, the longer we are able to enjoy the pleasure from consumption. And as human beings, we have the natural desire to reach our potential in life, to feel that we have achieved what we are capable of achieving. So all three of these, consumption, the lifespan, and the ability to reach our potential, should be included in any measure of welfare. So with this in mind, economists have come up with a measurement called the Human Development Index, which does include GDP per capita. That would be the consumption element, but it also includes measurements of healthcare and education. So this is known as a composite measurement, for HDI combines more than one number or measurement and attempts to create an overall picture of welfare throughout an economy. What are the healthcare measurements that are used in calculating a country's HDI? Well, that includes things such as infant mortality rate, that is to say, the number of children below the age of 1 who die per 1,000 births. So, if 100 children die before reaching the age of 1 years old per 1,000 births, that would be an infant mortality rate of 10%. Other measures of healthcare using HDI are the number of doctors per 1,000 people in the population, as well as the life expectancy. In terms of education, the HDI includes literacy rate, that is the percentage of population who are able to read and write. Also included is the average number of school years that an individual would attend within the economy. The output measurement is GDP per capita. So we have a combination of output, healthcare, and education measurements. Taking these three measurements, the HDI comes up with an index number. This index number will range from 0 to 1 for every economy. For example, Norway is currently first in the HDI league with an HDI measure of 0.949. When we compare countries as they appear in GDP rankings, highest to lowest, and HDI rankings, also highest to lowest, we find a strong correlation between the two of them. Countries that have very high GDP rankings, they also tend to be fairly high up in the HDI rankings. This does tell us that HDI and GDP are measuring things that aren't quite so different. This also tells us that GDP, despite all of its faults, is not such a bad measurement of welfare after all. However, there are two exceptions to this rule. China, for example, has the second highest GDP in the world, but does not even show up within the top 50 when its HDI is calculated. We could say that China has an economy that produces a lot of output, but where the welfare of its population is relatively low compared to other countries. This shows, again, that there can be differences with GDP and HDI within countries. HDI is a much better way to represent welfare due to GDP not always having the countries in the right order. Now back onto the topic of developed countries versus developing. When using HDI to categorize countries into these categories, they must first divide it into 4 groups: low, medium, high, and then very high human development. Countries in the category of very high development are classified as developed countries. Countries with low, medium, and high development are then classified as developing. The other way to go about this is to look at the per capita income of its population. If it's greater than 12,000, voila, it is a developed country, though this is not nearly as fun.